figure it out. It's the 14th. And okay, Bob, I think we got you going here. The question was about the week I'm traveling. So you're gonna give a presentation about the different stuff you do at Mayo Clinic.
It'll just be, you know, kind of overview my part and
which is going to be very interesting to everybody in this room.
some examples and stuff to show. So
It's going to be really great.
I can take as much time as you need.
Well, you will still do, because I'll be able to Google in. I may be in a car, but I will be able to Google in. And we can still do presentations and discussions and all of that. So as long as I'm not in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin's kind of a huge dead zone. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll be at a hotel by then. I don't know. We'll see. I won't be driving and hanging out. Yeah.
No dash cam.
Yeah, I'll set it up there. Police behind me.
Just tell them that it's like the little, what is it, all state, the one that they can see if you're like wearing your seatbelt.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So that's the 14th. You guys can still come, have class. I'll participate from afar. All right, cool. Anything else? Presentations, let's wrap it up. What do we only got? 2 more weeks of readings and then 2 weeks, no, 1 more week of readings and then 2 presentations? Something like that. 2 presentations, 2 readings, 2 presentations. That should be good. Okay, so what we're gonna do today is, and I kind of like to do this towards the end of every class because articles come out about the topic you're discussing while class is happening and right before class starts, and you miss the newest stuff that's being talked about. So I picked out 4 of the newest articles written about international technical communication and did not make you read them. But instead I read them, and I'm going to give you sort of an overview so you know what people are talking about right now. And I think you will be really excited because it's all stuff that you guys, I feel like as I was reading this, you guys could have written some of these articles. So I'm very excited about it. But it should give you an idea of what contemporary technical communication scholars are talking about when it comes to international technical communication. Okay, can someone hit one of the lights? There's 1 viewer on here. That's so sad. Okay. All right, Bob. So I put this up on the website. Okay. So one of the first, so current concerns for international technical communicators. One of the first articles that I ran into that was just published like a month ago is on the globalization of TechCom, which is talking about, it's basically if you were to put this class into an article, these are the concerns that we should have right now as technical communicators. And they have, here's a quote from it. The demand for global TechCom training has only grown, and in part due to globalization, technical communicators are also expected to use content management approaches to developing, managing, and publishing documents, a shift from producing whole documents to manipulating content at a granular level. Does that not just sound exactly like what we've been studying for weeks? So looking at content as, what was the info chunks? Didn't someone come up with that? Or info blob or something like that? Someone had a good term. Info nugget. That's right, info nugget. So looking at content as info nugget, as interchangeable, as one source that's going to go to multiple locations. That's kind of all the stuff that they're talking about in here, as opposed to, as a technical communicator, creating one whole document that's going to be translated to a bunch of different things. You create little chunks that can be modular for the, for a website, for mobile, for whatever, and that is written in a way that can be easily translated. So these are some of the main concerns: managing content for multiple devices, multiple audiences, multiple cultures. That's easy, right? Super easy. Okay, so they outline in this article 4 challenges that these are the 4 main challenges facing technical communicators today when looking at international technical communication. So determining whether to translate or localize. Can anybody guess what that means?
Run it through Google Translate versus have a human being.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, doing it at the high language level or down further at local custom and
Yeah.
language level.
Yeah, so if you're going to, as Darren said, stick it into a translation machine, whether that's Google Translate or whatever, and translate it into this other language, or whether you need to revise for content based on what's going to be appropriate at the local level. I was going to use the IKEA example, but I won't spoil your presentation. So, but we've been looking at that, right? So thinking about what symbols are appropriate. This week was heavy on the graphics, right? So what graphics are appropriate at the local level? So do you want to just put the envelope on there because that's one of the most international signs for email, or are you going to find something culturally specific? And as you notice, what I really liked about the longer article, I think it was that one, was that they talk about how you have to stop somewhere. You can't localize for every single cultural nuance. Culture is by definition going to be broad, and when you go down to the specifics, it's not going to work as well. So you have to start drawing those lines somewhere. So that's, according to this article, which I have all the citations at the end if you want to read more about this, that's the #1 thing facing that technical communicators in the field have to answer every day: translate or localize. So my hunch is in your projects, you'll run into this too. If you're revising documents for an international audience, you'll say, well, I can't change, let's say you have 600 images. I can't change 600 images. So what can I do to make this locally appealing and be able to be translated all over? The #2 challenge is resolving the problems presented by decontextualizing and repurposing of a text. Anyone got a guess for that one?
When you take something out of context, it loses meaning.
Mhm.
So, and if you're trying to reuse it for a different purpose, I mean, it could work or it could not work depending upon the situation which you're putting it into and taking it out of.
Yeah, definitely. So when you're looking at the content management system and you're taking apart these chunks of text, some of them lose meaning if they're not in context. If I, for example, have a description for an activity, but it's not, immediately below the name of the activity, that's going to lose its context and it's going to lose its meaning. So as things are getting smaller and more modular, there has to be a balance with keeping some context in there as well. Can anyone think of another reason this might be a problem? Besides just the practical losing meaning?
I mean, you can say things in one way in one culture, another will mean something completely different that might be inappropriate or.
Right.
So if you have a high context culture, something could make no sense if you have it super modular and presented without the other information that it needs, right? So that has two very practical concerns that you have to decide. So how small to make these pieces for the culture, for internationalization, and for the technology.
I thought too, a little bit going back to like the second and third week when we always had that diagram of the snail,
Mhm.
some people go directly towards the conclusion.
That's right.
Some people have to go around and around that. If you want to adapt it for that approach, you have to totally change the entire document organization.
Well, exactly, and
Translation.
exactly, and so we look at those models in here, and we've been doing a lot of theoretical parts of it. So, but you imagine the technical communicator on the ground that now has to take this text that's written linearly and modularize it for these different cultures that read in different ways. I mean, that's very different. You look like war weary when I say
Well, I
that.
just dealt with something like this at work.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, as that I'm researching my project about creating a technical document for my producers and doing a little research in some countries that may go into it, still quite up in the air. But when I saw the volume of information that has to be repurposed and so accurate, and how we're going to do that in these cultures, I just don't know yet. And it's not my team that does it. It's just it's a daunting task. I can imagine how difficult it would be to chunk the right content in the right layout for the right audience and try to maintain a consistent meaning.
Does anyone else deal with stuff like this at work? Decontextualizing, repurposing? Yeah. Well, one thing that reminds me of is the fourth article that I'll go into, which is about project management. Because as technical communicators, you might be the only one in the organization who's trained to think about these things and to ask these kinds of questions, which is why at a graduate level, that's why we focus on theory, so you know, at least even if you don't know how to implement something, you know how to ask these questions and get things moving. And that's the fourth article is about that kind of project management, which we'll get into in a little bit. The third one is managing the localization industry's work practices and translation memory tools. Any ideas?
It would be all over the board in terms of its sophistication of it, right?
That's right.
Where they're coming from.
So,
What do they have?
yeah, absolutely. And we've looked at a lot of case studies of different corporations that were doing localization or translation memory or something like that, and looked at lots of statistics about it and facts about it. And it's a difficult thing to actually manage when you're on the ground as the technical communicator. Yeah, so any other thoughts about that one? But that's something you would be able to do. At least you would be able to start doing it as you have some training in these types of things now, right? Localization and translation memory. Okay, so the other one, handling linguistic idiosyncrasies of particular languages. This we covered a lot, phrasal verbs, looking at different word meanings. If you look at today's reading, the different hand signals and things like that, how things can mean different things in different cultures. You don't have to memorize what everything means in every culture, but you need to be able to know enough about the other culture you're translating for to know how to ask the right type of questions or avoid certain things, or know that one thing might be problematic. And if you're looking at for translation rather than localization, knowing how to take out all of those idiosyncrasies of whatever language you're working in and prepare it to be translated. I actually talked to a professor in the College of Management who teaches international business, and he uses the same book we read, the Hofstede. So I asked them, I said, well, what do your students do? My students seem to have some issues with reading about these different cultural schemas and then realizing that they're sort of ethically problematic, but they still are applied and you need some sort of generalization, but it's sort of difficult to do that without making, stereotypes. And he's like, oh yeah, we cover ethics. I was like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we don't cover ethics. I'm saying the ethical, just that there's a lot of ethical problems with Hofstede. He's like, I don't know, it's never come up.
That's the College of Management.
I know. My students are better than your students. I'm just kidding. But I just thought it was interesting that somebody could read that and have no ethical issues or, cultural issues that branch out of it, even if it's not critical, but just questioning the applicability of some of these models. Well, okay, so Germans are this way. That's not always going to be the case, and you need to know that, right? So anyway, the second article is about international stakeholders. So when you're working in groups that have, so when you're working in groups that have stakeholders all over the world in the project, communication theory is dealing with this right now. When working with